Night Ed. This part of the presentation, we're going to take a world tour to see what different places have in the way of an indigenous religion. So let's start off in Hawaii. Hawaii has its own indigenous religion. The Hunakapua, which my pronunciation might be a little off, but please forgive me. The Hunakapua has existed for many thousands of years, so it's a little older than the United States, and it celebrates nature and emphasizes an awareness of self and the relationship a person has with everything else in existence. There's one command: harm no one and nothing with hate. Okay? So that's one of their main phrases. They also have 7 principles, and these 7 principles make up the core of Huna tradition. This is not only part of their tradition, it's a guide to their faith. It offers insights to human perceptions of reality. The first of the 7 principles is that the world is what you think it is. I'm not going to go into depth with these 7 principles because, well, you're going to learn more about that later. Also within the Hunakapua, you have the 3 selves. The Huna views a person in layers, right? At each level of self, there are going to be qualities to be developed. The development of these selves affects how the person connects with the higher self. So the 4 levels of reality. All things are at the same time. And then reality is objective, subjective, symbolic, and holistic. The shaman of the Huna, who is the Kapua, can exist in these realities in order to bring about changes that are necessary. So moving on to Africa, to another indigenous religion. So a little bit about Africa before we get started. First, Africa is not a country. So please don't ask someone who the president of Africa is, because that's downright embarrassing. Second, when you talk about traditional African religions in a short presentation like this, well, we're going to have to gloss over a bunch and generalize a bunch, because Africa is huge. It has many, many people and many, many cultures and many, many languages. So Africa is a very big thing, and we're trying to condense it in a short amount of time. So once again, if you are interested in these things, be sure to delve a little deeper, because once again, this is a survey. We're just kind of covering ground pretty quick. So if you ever want to find something, you're like, hey, I want to learn more about that. Well, take time to do it. I love it when people get curious about something, want to learn something. So diversity. Within Africa, there are many different religions. And these different religions offer the people there different paths. And then these paths give different names to a supreme being. Okay, so the different names of a supreme being. And the names of God in Africa usually are very descriptive. Okay, the name is in and of itself a description. So some examples are the source of all being, one who is ever present, the great providence who determines destinies, the one who is never fully known. Those are some pretty groovy names. And another common feature between these different religions is that they all view God as a universal sustainer. Within most African indigenous religions, there are spirits on both sides. So basically, they're spirits that are helping the supreme being accomplish things, and then those that are kind of detracting from it. So you kind of have a good and bad. The image that always pops up in my head are the little cartoons where the little angel is on one shoulder and the little devil is on the other shoulder, and they're trying to convince the person to do something. That's not exactly what they're going for here, but that's kind of the way I remember it. And people actually interact with the spirits more than they do the supreme being. Moving on to the Pacific Northwest. I'm hoping that I'm not confusing you too bad, because we are moving pretty quickly through here. So in the Pacific Northwest, you have Native American traditions. These groups, these tribes have many differences, but a common factor is the reverence they had for nature and their land. They believe that the human and the non-human processes are linked together, and they needed to be in sync with nature, okay? Because that's a spiritual goal. So going with individual or group, most Native American religions would not be considered monotheistic. That is, there's only one God, because there are many spirits, and this provided the interconnectedness between people and nature. A modern view of this is that all the spirits are actually, the sum of all of them makes up a greater being. And these spirits that make up the larger entity are based on the 6 directions: north, south, east, west, sky, and earth. So what values were there? Most Native American religions place an emphasis on balance and integrity. Rituals within the religion bring attention to the cycles of life and death and for living in harmony. So 3-2-1 contact. There were many rituals that were used to help connect a person to the spirit world. Some of these rituals, purification rites, coming of age rituals, mystical ceremonies, well, contacting the spirits was good, not just for the individual, but for the community as a whole. So let's move over to the Dakotas. You may have heard of these recently. So 2016 equals crazy year. And since 2016 was a crazy year for everyone, and if you didn't really notice that, well, I have no idea how you didn't, but there was something in the news about a pipeline, gas and oil, and some Native Americans. That was in the Dakotas. So let's look at what the deal is. These Native Americans were protesting a pipeline that was cutting through, or cutting close by, depending on who you were talking to. And for many people, this was viewed as an environmental protest. However, to many of the Native Americans, it wasn't just an environmental protest, it was a religious protest. And that becomes a big difference, because if you're an American and know what you should know about our government, we have a thing called the Bill of Rights. And within the Bill of Rights, right off the bat, one of the things that's protected is your religious freedoms, all right? And so it doesn't say anything in the first of the 10 about environmental rights, but it does cover religious. And so to these people, not only is this pipeline going to infringe upon their environment, but it infringes upon their religious beliefs, which then infringes upon their constitutional rights. It gets sticky pretty quick, right? So, as part of this unit, because this is such a big deal, you are going to have to read an article, and it's called The Dakota Access Pipeline. Is it just about the environment? It's about religion. It's kind of what we just talked about. But the cool thing is about the article, it delves into it about the how and the why, and they do a good job of explaining it, and you get to react to it and say, I agree, I disagree, this is what we should do. You'll have a great opportunity to express your ideas. So here's a little background. And if you ignored all your history lessons up until this point, well, this might be tough. But you should be aware that there were people here before the Europeans showed up. Those would be the Native Americans. A stereotype that people have about Native Americans is that they didn't value land ownership. That's not necessarily true. They didn't value single, like one person owning all of it, because to them, they all owned it. There was a collective side of things, not just a private ownership side of things. And so when you try to study it and you're learning about it, be sure you get rid of that stereotype that, oh, they don't care about the land because, people in New York bought Manhattan for a bunch of trinkets. Don't think that. All right? So that's just a stereotype we have that might impede your ability to learn about these different religious groups. And if you look lower down in this slide, It talks about the people are tied to the land. Well, if you feel tied to the land, well, you definitely value it. And so that's a huge part, because their life, their ways of life, their ancestors, their religion, it's all tied to where they were geographically. Another way to help you think about it is to think about Jerusalem. If you are from a background in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, well, the city of Jerusalem is pretty important. And people all around the world will make a pilgrimage to this city because they want to see where this religion really made an indelible mark upon the land. Well, if you think about how important that city is, well, for many people in the United States, they will not have the opportunity to go there. But for these Native Americans, that their Jerusalem, if you will, is where they are. And so when people start to dig in it or destroy it or do things to it, well, then it gets pretty, they feel pretty threatened about it. So that might just be a helpful way to understand why it's so important to them. So about the Sioux, all right, completely unrelated thing. There's two people named Susie Sioux, both musicians. Good music. You need to check it out. But in case you thought I was doing the switcheroo because I went from Dakotas to Sioux, this is what you need to check out. The Sioux is a collective group of the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota tribes. If you notice, those names are very, very similar. And so part of it's just linguistic differences, that they were separated, so pronunciation was a little bit different. But when we do talk about the Sioux, we're talking about these groups as a whole. So about the Sioux. Well, some of the beliefs of the Sioux are going to be listed, okay? We're not going to do all of them. But part of what they believed was that the universe is incomprehensible. You can't understand it. It's too great. And then life, growth, death, these are mysterious, okay? But they also are mysterious in the sense that they relate to or affected by a power that isn't just in a person. And this incomprehensibility, the unpredictability of the universe, is called Wakan. And this Wakan means that there's some sort of animating force in the universe. All of the Wakan together is called the Wakantanka. It is the sum total of the personified powers. So a creator, if you will. And the Wakantanka is also referred to as the six grandfathers. Other beliefs that the Dakotas have are that humankind formed and emerged from the womb of Mother Earth, along with the buffalo. Everything has its own spirit, but they all share the same spiritual essence, which is the Wakantanka. The most important aspects of someone's personality are going to be shared by the entire universe. And another part of the belief system is that human-like characteristics of different peoples led to the development of kinship. All right? So at birth, one is going to receive a takuskanskan. Don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but I think I'm getting in the ballpark. This being, if you will, is a guardian spirit and the life breath or ghost which comes from the stars, and at death it will return back to the spirit world. Another part of the Sioux religious beliefs is that rituals seek to placate the Wakan beings. All right? So think about rituals help appease or make peace with the spiritual side of things. And that these beings can be good and they can be bad. So a vision seeker within the tribe integrates the vision into the life of the community by performing rituals. And this sense of unity that they get is, and the cohesive force that they're going for brings about harmony with nature. And it's very, very important. So going along with the Black Hills, just Google it on Google Images. That way you can kind of see the place and see where it is and see what it looks like. But the Black Hills are very, very important to the Sioux, okay? They believe that all parts of the world, when it was created, all were given a song for that region. they hold that the Black Hills has the complete song. In other words, of all the created places, this place is very, very important to them. And here it's called the heart of everything that is. And that to the way the hills look, many people said that it was a reclining female figure in the hills. And then from her came life. And that the Dakota, the Sioux, went as a child to its mother's arms there. In the Black Hills, they believe that that's where the people came from. And that the bare butte on the eastern edge of the hills is where the Creator first imparted His instructions to the people. So once again, this place is very important. Bear Butte is the most sacred of all of these places. And the Sioux and the Cheyenne both come here every year for Vision Quest. Some Sioux believe that the spirit of the Sioux dead returned to the Black Hills. So, we covered a lot. And really, we didn't dive too deep into things. You just kind of learned some very basic generalities. But hopefully that's a jumping off point. Because another assignment that you're going to have is you're going to have a chance to research an indigenous religion. You can use one of these that we've covered in the presentation. You can go off and find your own. But what I want you to understand is that although there are these generalities, the shaman, the totem, the fetish, all of them might express themselves in different ways. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I look forward to seeing what we all will learn together with the assignments to come.